solar farm on the most amazing quality British agricultural land. And bear in mind, like New Zealand, we're a tiny island. We don't have the amount of spare land to be doing that. And I got sent a map the other day of the UK and all the places they're going to go all over the UK, and they're just joining up the dots, as simple as that. They're trying to take away every solitary opportunity for us to grow. That's all it's about. It's not about producing electricity. But one thing I will say is I did find out the other day, and obviously this has got no relevance to the public to know this information, apart from that it's just useful information. But the ones in the UK are wired in blocks of 6, and if one gets broke, none of them work. And I just thought that was an interesting fact for people to know. So, you know,
the solar panels are wired in blocks of 6, and if
one of them gets broken, none of them work.
How can that be environmental? Can you imagine the garbage in the dumps from that nonsense?
One thing I will say, we did some research on this in the UK, and most of the farmers who have been convinced to sell their land didn't ask the one real relevant question. And my uncle, before he passed, made a big thing about this because they asked him and he said, no way. He asked one question. When these things come to the end of their life, who's responsible for taking them out and putting the ground back to good? And it's down to the farmer. And if you actually work out it's nearly £1 million an acre to put back the land to what you need to do. $1 million to take the concrete, to get rid of the panels and deal with them correctly. No farmer's ever going to earn £1 million out of having solar panels on the land. Now, one thing I will also add on the English side, most of the companies who invested in putting the solar farms in were Chinese investment funds that have gone bankrupt. The farmer doesn't get paid for the electricity. Nobody anymore knows who it belongs to. The farmers can't take them out because they're live and connected. So a farmer's now given up 100 acres of his fields and he isn't even getting paid for it, and he's got no one to claim against.
That's so shocking. Wade, your reaction?
Okay, first of all, now I'll go back to what I said before about language. As farmers, the last thing we need to be doing is calling these disasters farms. They're not solar farms. They're not wind farms. They are factories and they are disasters. Number 2, in Victoria here, if they get their so-called renewable energy disaster to fruition, it will occupy, the footprint will be 70% of Victoria's farmland. That is huge. So in Australia here, we need coal-fired power. It's as simple as that. They can build new coal-fired power station. The Chinese are building them every day. India's whacking them up like they're going out of fashion. And we're selling our coal for stuff all to all these other countries to industrialise them and send our country broke. Now, in addition, they want to put these wind turbines just across the road from our place here. I got back from a tour in Queensland and we went to a meeting at a small town hall here at Nanilla. And I wasn't prepared to speak, but I stood up and I spoke for about 6 minutes, took on these scumbags from this company, this power company. And Nick live streamed it onto TikTok, had 360,000 views in no time. So the people are hungry to know what's going on. They're hungry for someone to stand up and fight against this stuff. And one of the big issues, I called out this company. We met with them a bit later because they wanted to put wind turbines here. And I said to them, who is what's the income? And they said maybe 20 grand a year off one of these things. And I said, so who is responsible for decommissioning this at the end of its 20-year lifespan? Oh, we do. Our company does it. And I said, so who's to guarantee that your company isn't going to go bankrupt or be sold to a $2 something or other? Oh, look, it would go in the contracts. I said, hell no, because our estimates at that point were 750 grand to $1 million per turbine based on whatever environmental crap they've invented by then to decommission these things. And they leave the concrete under the ground. So this is a complete disaster. And one of the main things that I see as a major problem, the government refuses to underwrite the cost of decommissioning. Now, if the governments, these scumbags in government, who are so hell bent on this renewable disaster, and it cannot possibly do what they're saying. It's about breaking the country and bringing electricity supply to a point where they go, oh, well, under climate change, which you people cause, we're going to have to shut down regions now. We're going to have to clean people out of regions. And the other, and a number of other points that we need to make here in Australia, where these saboteurs, these terrorists, are talking about electric vehicles. They say that'll put an extra 30% drain on the grid of a grid that they are destroying. So this can't work. And then the other thing they're doing here is saying in Victoria, you're not allowed to have gas appliances in new homes. Everything has to be electric. So they are creating a disaster. This is going to collapse. This is why in Australia, over the last 30 years, they have deliberately run down the coal-fired power stations that we have to basically a wreck. And then they say, oh, look, these things, no one can afford to fix them. They have deliberately done this. This is a plan that's been in place over hundreds of years. And this is what they've worked towards, destroying our coal-fired power and bringing in this disaster of renewable. It's not renewable. It's crap. It's not. There's no way it can do it. But this is what they've done. And in addition to that, here in Australia, they were encouraging everybody for the last 20 years, put solar panels on your roof of your house and get all this money coming in. You put money back into the grid, you get paid for it. And now they're charging people a fee to put the money, the electricity they're generating